Potape says SOE not the way to address tribal fighting. Supreme Court refuses urgent application filed by a member for Vanimo Green. Kumu Petroleum Academy receives 4.5 million kina funding.
This is NBC Papua New Guinea National News.
Good evening, I'm Antonia Singut. Komo Magarima MP Francis Potape says declaring a state of emergency to curb tribal fights in the area is not the way to address the issue. He says tribal fights, including other issues like lawlessness in Hela, can only be addressed by elected leaders in the province. Potape made this statement referring to media reports today by Taripuri MP and Finance Minister James Marape and Koroba Kopiago MP Philip Undialu, calling for a state of emergency to be declared in Hela following a tribal fight in Tari this week. Gabriel Bego reports.
Hela province is the host to resource projects including the PNG LNG project. Despite being rich in resources, the province also has problems of law and order, tribal fights and lack of basic services. The continuous tribal fights have claimed many lives, and this week another fight was reported in Tari, the capital of Hela. The fight has triggered different reactions from the elected leaders of Hela. In a media report, Taripuri MP and Finance Minister James Marape and Koroba Kopiago MP Philip Undialu have called for a state of emergency to be declared in Hela province to stop the fight. Their call, however, viewed by colleague MP Francis Potape, is not the way to solve this issue.
State of emergency exercises have been a failure in Southern Highlands. SOEs have been a failure in Oro province. SO has got no success rate in any province, and therefore a call by leaders to bring about SOE in Hela province is only to suit their own interest.
Potape told the media in Port Moresby that the only issue in Hela is leadership presence on the ground to address the issues, and Hela leaders must not shy away from issues facing the province.
Peace is brought about by leaders who are on the ground, members of parliament who walk the ground. If there are issues on the ground, you solve it. That is the problem. If there are trouble fights in one or two areas, a member of parliament and his district administrator and administrative team must work with the PBC, go to the area, look at the problem and solve it. A state of emergency would not come and solve the problem.
Despite the tribal fight in Tari, Potape says the LNG project is safe, giving assurance to the developer and the state. He is of the view that SOE is not the only way to stop the fight, and leaders through police must intervene.
I spoke to the PBC this morning, and he said he requested for additional policemen and some funding to arrest few leaders who are involved in those fights. He never recommended for state of emergency to be declared in the province.
Gabriel Bego, NBC National News, Port Moresby.
The Supreme Court has refused an urgent application filed by a member for Vanimo Green, Belden Nama, to reopen the Leadership Tribunal case against him, which was closed by the National Court 2 weeks ago. Nama's lawyer, Greg Shepherd, argued that there was fresh evidence that would prove biasness in the appointment of judges involved in the Leadership Tribunal after a copy of an email of detailed conversations between the presiding judges was sent to Nama by an anonymous witness. Presiding Judge Justice David Cannings ruled out the application, saying it lacked relevant materials and adequate care in its presentation to court to warrant its continuation. Bradley Gregory with this report.
It was a bad day at the courts today for Vanimo Green MP Belden Nama and his lawyer Greg Shepherd after the application seeking to reopen the Leadership Tribunal case against him was refused by the Supreme Court. Nama went to the courts with fresh evidence today. The courts, through Justice Cannings, had the case presented by Nama's lawyer Greg Shepherd, arguing firstly through an oral submission that just today an email was sent to Nama from an anonymous source revealing detailed communication amongst those presiding over the case, suspecting it would lead to biasness. The defendants argue that there was nothing further to pursue in the case, as the email maintained no substance to warrant further proceedings. Justice Canning said the case presented was vague and was unsupported with any evidence. He said, "I don't think the email would have much effect," adding that the email only detailed information of Chief Justice Sesalamo Injia, telling the judges to bring their gowns with them to the case. Bradley Gregory, NBC National News, Port Moresby.
A man has been arrested and charged following the incident on Saturday, where a referee was assaulted during the semi-finals of the Digicel Cup at the Sir John Guy Stadium in Port Moresby. The rugby league game was played between the Hagen Eagles and Agmark Couriers. NCD Central Commander Sylvester Cullout said the suspect was brought into the police station on Sunday.
Yes, there was one suspect who is the assistant trainer for the Mount Hagen Eagles. He was arrested and charged yesterday for inciting a fight and also for the assault of the referee. And that also, resulted in the Hagen Eagles supporters chasing all the Guria supporters and officials. And it's been described as a very disgraceful incident that happened. But we've received a complaint from the complainant, who is also a referee, and police, with the help of the management of Mount Hagen Eagles, they surrendered the suspect to the police on Sunday afternoon. He was kept in custody and he was arrested and charged yesterday. So the matter is now before the court.
Prime Minister Peter O'Neill says he expects Pacific Island nations to come out of regional discussions with the United States this week, holding a stronger collective perspective on key regional issues, including climate change and security. Mr. O'Neill arrived in Hawaii in the United States this morning, where he will chair the 10th Pacific Islands Conference of Leaders from today and tomorrow. The meeting will be attended by leaders and officials from Pacific Island nations and the United States and cover a number of regional integration and cooperation issues. The Prime Minister says the timing of this conference is also important, with a new President of the United States to be elected in the coming months. He says one of the important features of the PICL is the access it provides to some of the best research scholars and policy officials in the region. More than 30 students at the University of Papua New Guinea have received letters from the university's administration of their permanent exclusion from studies, with 7 days given to appeal the decision. All these students are members of the Students' Representative Council. Sheila Malkin reports.
According to the letter received by the students, contains their involvement in the student unrest and banning of the school properties. Couple of those affected have already drafted a letter for the university administration. The notice basically tells those students that their registration have been terminated with 7 days to appeal. One of the student SRC members said this is to ask the administration to reconsider their decision and allow for them to continue their studies, as most of them are in their final year.
We have written a letter to them this morning asking them to recuse their decision in the spirit of governation and in the spirit of reconciliation. We have written a letter generally for the student leaders.
Given the 7 days grace period, if their appeal is not in their favor, they will take legal actions.
The SSC will continue with the fight to reinstate the SSC student leaders. So we have acted on behalf of the office. It was nothing personal from the SSC. We represent the voice of the students, which we are mandated to do as the leaders of the students. So we want to assure all parents and stakeholders across the nation that the class will be back to normal, and we encourage students to continue with their studies as we, the student leaders, will fight this battle as given our rights in the University Act, and also take federal legal action based on our constitutional rights.
Meanwhile, Acting Chancellor Dr. Nicholas Mann said necessary actions taken by the administration is covered by law, adding that this is a normal process within the universities and students have to appeal.
They have to appeal to the University Council. The Council has an appeal, Council's appeal committee which students can appeal to, and the Council would look at the case, examine the evidence that are there. It's from a neutral point of view, because the management presents a report and the student will present their report or their reasons for their appeal, and Council looks at that. So that takes that's the process. If the Council opposes the appeal, then the decision is cancelled. The decision by the management is cancelled or varied, squashed or varied, and the Council makes a new decision. But if the appeal is rejected, then the management decision stands. That's a normal process.
Sheila Malkin, NBC National News, Port Moresby.
Resumption of classes at the University of Technology began with the registration of both residential and non-residential students yesterday and continued today. A total of 1,044 students are registered as of this afternoon. Meanwhile, the campus is back to normal without any reports of disruption. A temporary mess facility provided by the IPI group of companies was opened for the students since last Thursday to make up for the burnt mess. The Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Albert Schramm, this morning delivered his welcome speech to the students and explained all that had happened and denied all rumours. Dr. Schramm quoted in his speech, "Unitech has risen as a phoenix from the ashes, and the unity among staff and students can make Unitech fly." Turning overseas, it was a long wait, but the 45th Parliament of Australia is finally beginning. It's been a morning of pageantry and ceremony as senators and MPs were sworn in. The government's majority is perilously thin, but both sides are pledging to make the new parliament work.
A pause for reflection as our political leaders are welcomed back to Canberra with ceremony and gestures of friendship and fellowship. Inside the building, a brief private discussion between political foes before entering side by side, pledging bipartisanship and bonhomie.
Let us continue the 45th Parliament in the way we begin it today, with mutual respect, goodwill and a shared commitment to advance Australia and all Australians.
A challenge to all of us in the 45th Parliament. A challenge for us to use our Parliament more intelligently to elevate politics.
Noble sentiments, both leaders may have been inspired by this morning's church service.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.
But the opposition leader could only get as far as the car park before conflict reared its head again. Bill Shorten was confronted by a local Anglican rector who accused him of unfairly slurring people who are opposed to gay marriage.
Please don't speak like that about other Australians, so we can have a civil and tolerant discussion rather than the hate speak coming from our perspective.
If you're going to quote me accurately.
Well, that's how you were quoted in a number of bits of the press. Tell me what you said then. I'll be glad if I was wrong.
Just please don't hector me.
And that might well set the tone for the next 3 years, more than Bible readings. The government's still demanding that Labor pass its so-called omnibus bill, including all the spending cuts it previously said it would support. But the early signs aren't hopeful.
They are mad for approaching the start of this term in the sort of aggressive, over-the-top manner that they have.
What they were trying to do is sneak the savings in there, in the election campaign, and not mention it, and hoping everyone would forget about it on the other side of the election.
The Treasurer's also getting free advice from radio hosts who are unimpressed by Parliament's sparse sitting schedule.
We work every single day.
You're defending the indefensible. You might work every single day, but I'm sure there are a lot of bludgers.
And that's not the only friendly fire that the Prime Minister and the Treasurer are facing in coming weeks. At least 10 coalition senators are willing to back a private member's bill to dilute the Racial Discrimination Act so it's no longer illegal to cause offence on the basis of race or religion. That's not enough to get the bill through the upper house, but it is enough to give the Prime Minister a severe headache. While there are smiles aplenty as the Speaker re-enters the chamber, insults will not be in short supply when the 45th Parliament begins in earnest.
We now look at the weather preview with Douglas.
Thanks, Antonia. A quick sneak preview of the weather. Isolated showers in the southern and Momasa regions. Similar for the highlands of the country, with scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms in the New Guinea Islands. Join me a little later in the bulletin for the details. Antonia, it's back to you.
Thank you, Douglas. Coming up after the break, 45 million kina presented to the Kumul Petroleum Academy by the Kumul Petroleum Holdings, and more than 12 tonnes of bags of rice shipped out of Kimbe in the West New Britain province. Stay with us on NBC National News.